Picture this, December 1971. A war on the Indian subcontinent comes to a sudden, absolutely shocking end. For Pakistan, it's nothing short of a national catastrophe, a humiliating defeat that literally tore the country in two.
And this number, this is the one that burned itself into the nation's soul. 93,000. Let that sink in for a second. That's how many Pakistani soldiers, sailors, and airmen laid down their arms. It was one of the biggest military surrenders in modern history.
The sheer scale of it all, it created this deep collective trauma. And it led everyone to ask one single, agonizing question. How on earth could this have happened?
To get that answer, the government of Pakistan launched a top-secret investigation led by its own Chief Justice, Hamoodur Rahman. But its findings, they were so explosive they were buried for nearly 30 years. Today, we're going to crack open the pages of that once secret report to really understand the anatomy of this surrender. So let's dive in with the very first clue it uncovered.
You might think an investigation like this would start with battle plans or troop movements, but no. The commission started with the character of the men in charge. And what they found, well, it was a rot that had set in long before the first shots of the final war were even fired.
The report basically concluded that this decay began when the army got involved in running the country under martial law. When the military takes over the government. Suddenly, the lines between being a soldier and being a politician got really, really blurry. Professional standards just plummeted, and corruption started to seep into everything.
Can you believe that? A witness attributed that shocking statement to Lieutenant General Niazi, the top commander of all forces in East Pakistan. This quote, it just reveals this fundamental mindset. This wasn't about protecting your own province, it was about plundering a conquered land. And it set an absolutely disastrous tone for the troops on the ground.
The commission put together basically a laundry list of allegations against the top commander. The report gets into all of it. A man distracted by personal vices, from alleged sexual immorality to accusations of profiting from smuggling. It paints this picture of a high command that was just morally and professionally broken.
So you have this morally compromised leadership. The next clue the commission found was how the army's own actions on the ground systematically turned the local Bengali population against them, creating the very insurgency they were supposed to be putting down.
What the commission discovered was that military operations, especially these so-called sweeping operations to clear out insurgents, were just conducted with brutal, indiscriminate force. So instead of winning any hearts and minds, these actions just bred hatred. They ended up pushing the civilian population right into the arms of the rebels.
A witness told the commission this. Now, on the surface, the phrase being sent to Bangladesh, it sounds almost harmless, right? Like maybe they're just deporting someone. But the real meaning was so much darker.
That was the code, the euphemism for extrajudicial killing. People would get picked up just on suspicion, and they would simply disappear. This just shows you the complete and total breakdown of the rule of law. It created this atmosphere of pure terror that drove an even bigger wedge between the army and the people.
The commission's summary of what went on is just chilling. It lists the targeted killing of intellectuals, the slaughter of their own Bengali soldiers during disarming operations, and even verbal orders from a brigadier to kill Hindus. The report's conclusion was clear. These actions fatally undermined the army's position way before the final Indian invasion even started.
All right, so on top of the moral collapse and the brutal conduct, the commission identified a third and final clue: sheer professional incompetence, and a military strategy that honestly seems like it was designed to fail.
So the official plan on paper was to turn key towns and cities into these impenetrable fortresses. The whole idea was that troops would fall back to these fortified spots and defend them to the last man, grinding down any invading army. In theory, it's a defense-in-depth strategy.
But in reality, the fortress concept was a complete disaster. The commission's findings show this unbelievable gap between the plan and what actually happened. Fortresses were abandoned without a fight, withdrawals turned into chaotic, disorderly retreats, and most critically, the ultimate prize, the capital city of Dhaka, was left almost completely undefended.
The commission's final verdict on the strategy was just scathing. The entire war plan was fundamentally flawed from the get-go. It didn't account for the hostile population, or the fact they had no reserve troops, or the enemy's complete control of the air. The crucial point is, even with perfect leadership, the army was fighting with a broken plan.
So,
After laying out all this evidence, moral decay, widespread atrocities, strategic blunders, the Hamoodur Rahman Commission was ready to deliver its most explosive and politically dangerous conclusion of all.
Get this, the report didn't just recommend that generals be fired or demoted, no. It called for public courts-martials for the highest levels of the military and the government for their role in the disaster. This was a demand for accountability at the very, very top.
And the list of names, it was a who's who of the ruling establishment. The president himself, General A.A.K, was accused of criminal conspiracy. The theater commander, General Niazi, faced 15 different charges, including cowardice and orchestrating a shameful surrender. The commission's message was loud and clear. This wasn't just a defeat, it was a crime.
And yet, despite these damning findings, these unambiguous recommendations, what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The trials never took place. The report was seen as too explosive, too damaging, and so it was buried, kept secret from the Pakistani people for decades, until it was finally leaked online.
The story of the Hamoodur Rahman Report, it's so much more than just an explanation for a military loss. It's a powerful case study in what happens when accountability is just swept under the rug. And it leaves us with this final, lingering question. For any nation grappling with a difficult past, what is the true cost of burying the truth versus confronting it head-on?